Hey neighbor, welcome back to Ranked on ARTV. It's been a while, but in case you forgot, my name is John and I host the show even though it's been about a year since I released a full discography episode. We're back in action with one of the most likable bands to ever throttle the alternative airwaves, Jimmy Eat World. Any fan of rock, emo, or any kind of alternative music could easily connect to this group, and it completely makes sense to me as a longtime fan. We're roughly 30 years into this band's existence, yet they've still been full of life in recent years, and in today's ranking, I'll be covering all 10 of their studio albums from the mostly forgotten self-titled debut, all the way through, that was a 2-in-1 pun, damn I'm hot, but yeah, self-titled up through Surviving that released in the fall of 2019. Will an unexpected hero conquer my list, or will static prevail? I genuinely feel like Jimmy Eat World are one of those bands where I can't tell if people get super defensive about what their best album or maybe their top 3 is. Either way, my tastes are probably super weird, but remember, these are all just my opinions, and I hope that no matter what, you enjoy the video. Please press the like button if you do, and share this out with a fan of the band. It really helps out the channel, I appreciate you watching, and to those that go the extra mile to support my content on Patreon, a massive thank you to you. Returning power pop to the front seat almost sounds like the perfect nostalgic formula to make a great Jimmy record, but it really just wasn't. Ranking dead last in the pack, I've got Invented, an album that's by no means awful, it's just dreary and forgettable, almost like a band going through the motions that should be pulling my attention, but it's just an empty shell instead. This album dropped the year I started college, and at the time, I was stoked about it without even really thinking about the sound. There's absolutely some killer cuts here. The lead single alone is a fist in the air shout-along moment worth feeling in your bones, so with my best theory, the sincere ballad movie-like, and the abnormal but great Tom Linton sung Action Needs an Audience lighting the path, how exactly did the band drop the ball here? 2010 was a weird time for alternative music and bands. New decade, new rules, and Jimmy Eat World found themselves locked in a bit of a creative stalemate. The loose rule of only writing about photographs was a great concept for their frontman Jim Adkins, and it leads to some insightful wisdom you'd expect from the once emo mainstay, but more often than not, it's hard to argue that this album just doesn't demand to be played over and over again. The self-titled Jimmy Eat World album is only bad if you're judging it by the band's own standards, which for the sake of this video, we kinda have to. They dropped this off in 1994 as a fully independent effort, and it failed miserably. It's almost completely out of print, it's not on streaming services, and at this point, if you've got a physical copy, you're probably sitting on a fat stack of cash. Sunny Day Real Estate is a band that instantly comes to mind when I spin this project. It's rough around the edges, punk rocky and bullish in nature, but also not really suitable for Jim's vocal range. It's just weird to hear him halfway shouting on these tracks, and often trading out with Tom in that lead vocal role. Between this album and Static Prevails in '96, they definitely did some growing, but they didn't do enough to separate themselves from the likes of Nirvana, Sunny Day Real Estate, and the other numerous emo or punk groups they were indebted to. Like I mentioned with the self-titled, this honestly wasn't the guys being themselves. They latched onto this notion that they were gonna evolve from this emo-tinged punk band into this post-hardcore group with emo lyrics. There's a small but loyal following for this specific style of Jimmy Eat World, but I can't say that I'm among that crowd at all. There's little in the way of distinct sounds, and it was pretty clear that they hadn't started fully believing in their craft, at least not to the point where the artistry outshadowed their numerous influences. There are elements I really like about this album, including the tracks where Jim and Tom trade off on the lead vocals or else come together, like on Call It in the Air, or Thinking That's All, which is a smart release of tension to open the floodgates. Now on the downswing, don't shoot the messenger, but the vocals on this album are so easy to get sick of. It actually sort of feels like a lackluster imitation of the aforementioned Sunny Day Real Estate, and hey, they're a fantastic emo band. I can see why someone in the 90s especially would have been keen to emulate that style, but it just makes me seasick after a while. Got a good thing, but you're better off not asking me how. Breaking up is hard to do, but breaking up as an adult, that's even harder. Just ask Jim Adkins, he wrote an entire album about it. Yet with all of that heartbreak looming in the air, something about Damage feels reluctant to give up hope. There's resilience written all over its spine, and unwillingness to let what was once a great romance slip into the black lagoon of divorce. Naivety kicks in as a defense mechanism against pain, which really makes for an endearing listen that seems to comment from several perspectives, but with that in mind, I honestly can't sit here and say it's all that compelling of an album. Let's not go as far as to say they don't have moments of excellence. The lead single I Will Steal You Back alone stokes a fire, but it's one of the Jimmy albums you'll come back to the least unless you find yourself in the unfortunate circumstance of relating heavily to the lyrics. Taking a trip through Damage proves to be a lot like a thought bubble floating above your head at all times. Judging based on the restraint shown by the band members, it's clear that they wanted to single this out as an intentionally more stripped back record, at least compared to their older catalog. Check out Please Say No and No Never, lots of no's all around, and if those highlights catch your ear, then this might be right up your alley.
Someday we might not bother, line up the way we should.
Admittedly, there's problems with this one, both in terms of cohesion and pacing, but damn it all if this isn't a hell of a comeback after a few records that didn't do a ton to innovate their sound. Integrity Blues is not the total reboot with all new actors that causes fans to riot online because the changes were so drastic. It's the years later flash forward moment of graceful aging, the one that sprinkled in updated arrangements, unique instrumentation, but also a healthy serving of some of their more classic Jimmy sounding cuts. What they leave you with is a sense of mystery that can at times be calm or downright catchy, as solidified by the life-affirming Through or the persuasive Sure and Certain, but those almost serve as the clickbait spread out at key intervals to really force you to get to the heart of the record. Once you've pulled a magic school bus maneuver and have shrunk down to the size of a marble, you float around to the lighter areas that deserve to be zoomed in on. Actually, the best three-peat this album has to offer is on some of these more experimental passages, locking in with the excellent piano and drum-heavy plea It Matters, continuing with the science fiction meets relationship crisis Pretty Grids, and enthralling us further with the best track on the album, Pass the Baby. They do such a good job at building suspense in their songs all throughout their discography, but the payoff on Pass the Baby in particular really smashed all expectations in the face. The guitar work here is really delicate to match the serenity that lingers as Atkins sings, until it's not at all. They get loud, and this single song captures what made this record genuinely good at its core.
That's how a diamond rolls, yeah. Give yourself the right chance over time.
Call me crazy, but Surviving is a late in the career serotonin boost just waiting for you to discover. Not enough people did, and I hate that. I can't stand that some fans see Jimmy as a band that peaked a long time ago and don't have anything to offer, considering that's a damn lie. The opposite of the truth, people! In a world where genuine positivity can be hard to find as the earth burns literally and metaphorically around us, just look to the title of this album, Surviving. Jim Adkins knows that nothing happens overnight, so don't expect some top 40 bullshit spew about how life will turn around if we just put a smile on. No, the riff-centric title track, for example, acknowledges the struggle immediately with the line, yeah, you can still survive, but not exactly live. That's exactly how I see it in these dark times. You have to address that it's never gonna be perfect, but still, we gotta find a way to do more than just survive another day. Transitioning from those rays of light to the more thoughtful electronics of 555 and beyond doesn't feel like a betrayal of consistency, rather a welcomed addition alongside other top-notch companions like the Hella Slammin' Criminal Energy and the AFI-soaked closer Congratulations that literally features Davey Havoc of AFI. How Jimmy Eat World grow from here really excites me, given the wildly successful games of cat and mouse they've played on their two most recent releases. They're aging like a fine wine instead of fading into the sunset as some sort of dying breed, and that makes me happy knowing that even if they're never going to be super popular again, there's always a loyal fan base that recognize the band's passionate instincts for what they do best.
With a little sleep and surrounding me.
Believe it or not, I don't just automatically put Bleed American in number 1 or even number 2 because it's their most well-known and popular. I love a great deal of it, some of their best songs live here, but it's far from Jimmy Eat World's final form. I actually don't spin this record nearly as often as you might think, with as much of an emo pop-punk classic as it is. I just happen to have the unpopular opinion of this not being one of their top 3 albums. Sue me! Rachel Hayden provides some effective backing vocals to the record that give them a distinct edge, allowing for more expansion past their lyrically complex emo rock sound into power pop and pop punk, which definitely sounds good on them. It's just that the lyrics can fall into some cliche traps that leave you wanting something a little deeper. Producer Mark Trombino worked with them again on this project, and I still think this album sounds pretty great, even if the dated elements do occasionally become glaringly obvious. They learned how to stretch their talents to build ridiculously catchy songs without sacrificing their hearts in the process for a major label. You'll likely recall a large handful of the singles from the record, from a praise song to pop punk night staple The Middle, but let's not pretend that we don't all know what the best single from the album is. Say it with me, class. Sweetness is the best song on Bleed American and one of the best songs from Jimmy Eat World's discography. Okay, Eric, I didn't see you with a hand over your emo heart. Come see me after class. You're getting a stack of albums to play in detention.
Back away to the safety of a quiet house. If there's ever chance in this moment.
Chase This Light deserves more credit. Just stating the facts here, this is a really good album with some diamond quality standouts in the mix. Is it weighed down by its cheesy tendencies and questionable production from Butch Vig? Sort of, but also no, they're literally part of the package deal that makes Jimmy's 6th album such an entertaining roller coaster of a listen. Falling back on power pop without shedding the alternative rock armor they'd attached on their previous album Futures was one of Chase This Light's most obvious keys to success. Big Casino is a fucking behemoth that you actively encourage to stomp all over you with its blistering guitar dominance, and that absolutely perfect son of a gun is just the tip of the iceberg. When you're not looping Casino on repeat, you can turn to the string-filled title track that gets better as it goes on, the fierce firefight that roars with life by the time its epic bridge hits, or the cryptic Gotta Be Somebody's Blues that switches gears and balances acoustic guitars, mysterious vocals, haunting violins, and a tempered mood that sees Jim Adkins at his most expertly poised. They do a ton of things right with the musical atmosphere, occasionally taking cues from fellow alternative outfit Death Cab for Cutie, who were conquering the airwaves at that time. I promise that and most of the other things I've said up to this point are compliments, and while I wish I had the time to wax poetic about the lyrics and the other songs I love that switch up the subject matter, nothing compares to the life-changing ballad Dizzy, one of the best songs they've ever created by a long shot, and one that's been kicking my tear ducts in the ass lately due to its sheer brilliance and beauty. Do me a favor, even if you don't check out the full album, go back and revisit this song, or if you've never heard it before, just listen to it. It could change your life. There's a lot of other fun, impactful tunes on Chase This Light, and a few skippables that show the bare threads giving way, but overall, I highly recommend this album that I'll always have a safe space for. It was my first Jimmy Eat World album that I was a fan for on release date.
Not bigger than this, not better, what can you learn?
Blaspheming the name of clarity by having the sheer audacity to toss it at number 2 might just be a cardinal sin in some music circles, but I always go with my own heart's warning, and it told me loud and clear, John, this isn't even your favorite Jimmy Eat World album, dog. Don't go putting this album on top just to make somebody else happy. After discovering this band in 2005, I came across the music video for Lucky Denverment playing on TV, and 13-year-old me was not impressed. I was caught up in pop-punk leaning emo at the time and didn't really get the nuances of the music and lyrics until high school, probably around my junior year. One of my friends had the Clarity CD, and one Saturday afternoon, this album just clicked for me permanently, and I've never looked back. High-frequency transmissions roll out in sections, with cuts like a Sunday piling on the guitars, and Blister leading a back-half tempo rally that runs between some of the long, effective emo-as-hell songs Just Watch the Fireworks, my personal favorite on the album. It's just dripping with angsty bliss, and of course the 16-minute finale Goodbye Sky Harbor that every true emo kid plays to their crush as they confess their feelings. Fans call it their classic album for a reason. Even if you're not nostalgic for this era like most of us watching probably are, it's still a majorly important album in the emo history books, and there's a lot of songwriting and musicianship that finally proved to the masses that Jimmy would indeed eat world.
Taste you all over my teeth. Never again, just tonight. Okay.
I feel emotionally winded after a listen through Futures, and that's a good thing. In 2004, Jimmy Eat World intentionally broadened their horizons as a band, leaning more towards an alternative rock sound instead of just power pop and pop punk. If you can't tell already, I totally adore Futures, and the songs here still give off an emotional potency that should come with a warning label. Classifying this as just a rock album isn't right at all. This still bleeds black with emo undertones filling their frontman's shoes, always following close behind even the most high-octane rippers like a Shadow. You can't shake it, nor should you want to. That Shadow is the Grim Reaper tour guide we all need as Futures weathers the ebb and flow. Fall summons this record from the grave each year like a speedboat sailing across foggy autumn waters. There's gloominess even with a spark as shown by the remarkable spirit Night Drive strides in with, but the thrilling Pain, which was my first Jimmy song by the way, cries out for help in the midst of its roaring guitars. Jim Adkins made giant strides with his mature lyrical palette that always feels uber expressive, whether that be sadness, anger, or joy, but he also improved as a vocalist, which you can hear as soon as you cue up the album's title track, the opening song on the album, which is a hopeful protest against the government. His expression is certainly brought out further by the array of dazzling musicianship from the other band members, with some of the most key climaxes coming in on Drugs or Me, one of the most soul-crushing songs about addiction I've ever heard, and the closer 23 that continues to own my heart to this day. Basically, I'm a total wreck when it comes to their 2004 album, and I proudly show it. Thank you for the roller coaster ride, Jimmy. I know so many people hold this very close to their heart, and it's one of those records I hope to continue passing on through the generations. They managed to nail the perfect in-between of gushing emotions and perfectly structured music, rhythm, and atmosphere, and for that, it stands tall as my favorite Jimmy Eat World album. Ranked is a series that's made possible by your support, whether that be something as simple as liking the video, sharing it out with a music community you're a part of, or donating directly to support my work on Patreon. Thank you for tuning in. Should I count down my top 10 favorite Jimmy Eat World songs? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you want to see another discography ranking, then tap here, or watch me talk about more of Jimmy's music by tapping here. Subscribe for the love of music, and I'll be back soon with more Ranked on ARTV.